So, welcome everyone to another leadership podcast. It's thought leadership time, and I am very, very privileged to have a special guest all the way from Arizona tonight, Mr. Evon Jones. And he is someone that I had the privilege of working with, I think, back in the early 2000s, and somebody that I respect very, very much. And I'm so happy that he can tell us a little bit of his success journey, and we'll spend a bit of time talking about thought leadership and your thoughts on that. And maybe before we start, if you could give us just a little bit of a summary of who you are, sir.
Oh, well, first of all, Walter, thanks for having me. It's really good to see you.
It's good to see you.
So I guess I could start here. Uh, who am I? Professionally, I run a consulting business currently. It's called the ELLOYD Group, and we focus on um, tech strategies, working with tech leaders on developing strategy, technology strategies, business strategies, and how that lines up with the overall company. I also work with business leaders when they have leadership challenges within their organization and helping them through how do you navigate those things.
Hmm.
Um, from that, I've been CIO multiple times in a number of industries.
Yeah.
I've been in the corrections technology industry, I've been in retail, I've been in fashion retail, I've been in life sciences, consumer packaged goods, and even with an airline. So, seeing for me, that really shapes me as an individual because I've seen a variety of industries and therefore a variety of perspectives. Personally, I
Hmm.
view myself as, I joke sometimes about how people describe me because I actually do agree. They tell me a lot
I do
that
agree.
I am a humanitarian that believes there is good in all people, and I firmly believe that. So that drives a lot of how I approach people and drives my personality a lot. And I'm a believer in, we all have a higher purpose to positively impact humanity. That purpose could be, great and grandeur, or it
Hmm.
could be small, but it moves the needle. So for that, that's kind of me personally, and professionally.
So, a lot to unpack there. You take a look at some of those job descriptions that you just threw across the board. They're quite varied. So, so maybe a question before we unpack some of this is just the question of thought leadership, and I find that different people have different views of what it is. Kind of holds together one person to another. But what would be your view of thought leadership? What do you think it represents?
Uh, I would say that when I think about thought leadership, I think about the ability um, to really internalize and put varying ideas, varying perspectives, and put together a very cogent and coherent um, strategy or a point of view that will impact something in some way, right?
Mm,
Because it's one thing, it's one thing to have ideas, but if it's not impactful, then
that's right.
you really don't get the value that could really come from that. So I would say that's one aspect of thought leadership for me. The second thing for thought leadership is how do you help others as a thought leader, right? If you're a thought leader, how are you helping people, and how are you growing within that sphere? So you're always learning as a thought leader, but being able to put together those thoughts, putting together a
Mhm.
cohesive and a coherent point of view, and being able to leverage it to for the good is how I would see a thought leader.
I think that's a beautiful explanation. Actually, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that one of the things that you might agree is that the better your question, the better the thoughts. I mean, often I remember you in these sometimes these odd situations, right, where you're trying to get a group of individuals and high performing individuals to agree on a strategy and technology or anything else. It requires this give and take and a lot of questions has to be
Absolutely.
asked, and and sometimes the answers come a little slower, but you got to just be patient. So to create this into yourself, I mean, so this all starts somewhere. So give us a little bit about where you started and like how did you come about?
It's really interesting. Um, I've been fortunate to work with people that and working for people who believed in me,
Mm,
and and they were also willing to teach. And for me, learning is a constant for me. So
sure.
I'm soaking that up as a sponge. So how does it start? I remember I had many times people I've worked for would always say, um, "You know more than you think you know."
It's good.
And the first time I heard it, I would chuckle. But when I heard it multiple times from multiple people, number one, and number two is they've actually validated every time I was successful at something. Remember the time we talked about this and you thought you didn't know as much as you did? So, I've had some fantastic mentors and I've worked with some fantastic people. And as a result, um, I was always thrusted into a leadership role, whatever we were doing. I think about when I was on Wall Street and there was a new business and a crisis. I am the programmer, but I was thrusted in developing the strategy for supporting this new product. When I was working for a card company and a travel company, one of the largest in the world, and they were putting together a foreign exchange retail outlet business. I was thrusted in, how do I understand the business strategy and build the technology strategy? So I found myself being thrusted in different situations, and in those situations where I probably knew more than I thought I know, but I'm sure there was a lot I didn't know. You know, there were
Naivety is a strength.
naive. Exactly. And I remember another situation where, when I was in the life sciences business, I thought that the company needed a global CRM strategy and put together, one of the big used to be the big three, then the big four consulting companies, and helped me think this through. And it was more of a business problem. And so when I was able to kind of put together all that and come up with a conclusion that I think was very valuable to the company that will contribute to the bottom line. I proposed it to my CEO and said, we need to create this business unit and get somebody in the business to lead it. And so that was a great conversation. And 2 weeks later, he comes back and he says, great
Guess what?
conversation. Guess what? Guess who the business leader is?
There you go. There you
So
go.
so as a CIO, I'm now a business leader leading global customer strategy as it relates to CRM, and eventually led global customer service. So
That's interesting. When you look at this, sorry, just as I'm thinking how young you would have been when the first challenges like that came about. How old would you have been? Like the Wall Street, for example, it sounded like the earliest one.
oh gosh, I was pretty young. So I was probably around on Wall Street. I was about 25.
25. So one of the questions I like to ask people when they're 25 years old, 27, 28, 30, 35, young people of all ages, let's say, is when you're looking forward, do you have any idea where you're going to end up? And then when people are a little bit further along, I ask them, when you were 25, did you have any idea where you were going to end up? Did
Mhm.
so when you were 25 and doing that job, how far could you see ahead?
It's when I was 25 and doing that job, um, I couldn't see. I didn't have a vision about where I was going to end up because I was focused on solving the business problems that are right
Mm,
in front of me.
sure.
So you think about at 25, I'm doing that. At 26, I got married, and beginning to start a family. So, your head's down trying to make sure that you're
Sure.
contributing to a company and yet trying to start a family. So, to be quite honestly, there was there was no vision, at least in my head, about where I'm going to be in the future and what I want to do. I felt like as a technologist, I was good at what I did. What I didn't know was that I was also a good business leader, and other people noticed. And I would say it's probably midway in my career that I figured out the answer about where I want to be or what I want to do. Because in my
That's
career,
already pretty good. Some people still figuring it. I'm still trying to figure it out.
well, you figure it out every day, right? And
That's right.
it gets improved every day, right? And it gets it get morphed into something else, and as you get informed by other things, and as things change in the world and in business, right? But the general direction I was pretty midway in my career. I'm like, okay, I can do this, and figured out quite at that point, figured out that yes, I'm a technologist, but I'm really a leader and a business leader with technologies as my tools. And
So I was just
it,
going to say, so the young people that are listening to us right now, and they're listening to this, and they're saying, "Well, I am good at what I'm doing." How can you take today's examples, like things that would have happened to you, like you were saying, my head was down. What things could have happened that actually changed your trajectory and said, if it wasn't for that moment, I didn't recognize that moment changed me at that moment in time because something happened, somebody happened, or some circumstance happened. But could you remember something that would have started to put you on this path to that clarity?
um, I would have to say, I would have to say, I would go back to Wall Street when I was in Wall Street, and that was early in my career.
Mm,
But it was very profound. Um, Here is this new instrument in the financial markets called AAA swaps.
mm.
We have technology that does not support that. We have to rapidly improve our technology to support that. And I needed to figure out how to get that done with a team. Um,
At
Quite
25.
frankly, that was a very sobering thing for me when I got that assignment.
I'm sure.
Incredibly sobering. Um, so naturally, um, I think about it. I thought about it in technical terms. What am I going to do technically? Um, but it quickly became a shift in focus about, do I clearly understand what the business really needed and the impact that this technology is going to have on the business. Once that aha came, then my
Mm.
approach to the technology strategy around it was very, very different.
So you're talking it's interesting, you're talking technology was a shifting factor for you back at that young age. And if you look at technology today and the speed of which technology is still transforming the way we think, the way we do business, whether we talk about AI or just the ease of setting up this very podcast.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on today's technology and how this thing is evolving? Is this scary, or is this just continued fun, or somewhere in between?
Well, it's continued fun because it's continued change, right? So when you have consistent change, it's a lot of fun to do that. Um, Scary, absolutely. If you think about the capability of AI today, think about the potential of what it could do tomorrow, right? So that in itself is scary. And as a young person or anybody in our field, when we think about this, you can easily get overwhelmed by, I need to know everything.
Mm.
And once you get to that place where I need to know and be the expert at anything, at everything, rather, um, it becomes an anchor because it prevents you from moving forward. And you have to be able to be comfortable with knowing that what you're doing is advancing the need of the business you're supporting. I may not know everything, but there are people around me and there are
Mm.
resources that I can rely on that will help the organization be successful. And so when you think about it that way, it's no longer about me. What do I know? It's more about how do you orchestrate a successful act?
Say
So
that again. Say that.
scary,
Repeat that. That was very good. How you what?
or how
Arcade.
you orchestrate a successful act.
That's very good. I like it. Yeah. So you are what you influence.
You are what you influence.
Perfect.
Yes.
So leadership is a combination of all those things. So these insights that you have about, I can't have all the answers. I can't know everything, and I don't know who could possibly know everything in today's speed. I can barely know what happened yesterday, never mind what's going to happen in 6 months from now.
Right.
So when you look at that and you look at the leadership qualities, and it doesn't start when you're young, often it's like we're very impatient, we get things done. So again, our listeners often are just looking for, I wouldn't say shortcuts, but they're looking for, ways for them to break through. I work with a lot of young people, and the questions quickly come into, well, how will I know when the decision is right, or how do I know when to look for a mentor? What does a mentor look like? And so there's a lot of questions around that, especially, and again, young age and starting to figure out, yes, I got the family to take care of, but I still want to make sure this other part of my life is moving forward. So let's talk about leadership a little bit and say, how do you know, one, how to become the right leader, and two, how do you know how do you get your mentors? Do you look for them, or do they come to you, or both?
I think it's both. But I would say it doesn't matter where you are in your career. I think everyone should have a mentor.
I agree.
Uh, and at some point, and it's becoming a little bit more popular now, is having a own personal board of directors, meaning the people that are advocating for you and invested in making you better, right?
I
So,
like that. That's very good.
yeah, so don't be afraid to get input. Don't be afraid to ask for help. But having a personal board of directors, is what I would call it, right? But it could be a number of people that you trust who are invested in seeing you successful. Um,
That's
um,
very good. I like that.
definitely have that as well as a mentor. Um, the other thing is, especially early in your career as we get busy, one of the things that I've learned, and I wish I had done it earlier, is understanding the value of networking.
Big time.
Because we sometimes we sometimes we get so focused that we're not seeing what else is happening around us, and if you're and the people that are out there that could be of help to you. But networking is not a one-way street. You
Hmm.
also have to be able to figure out who is it out there that you can help, right? And what
Absolutely.
value can you provide in that scenario? So it's a two-way street. It's not just a sucking sound, right?
That's right.
You just kind of suck up everything that everybody gives you and you walk away.
That's
No,
right. Exactly right. That's good.
it's a two-way street. So I would say my advice would be definitely learn the art of networking, and secondly is definitely find a mentor. Doesn't matter where you are in your career, and find yourself, establish a board of directors. You have sometimes, it allows you to not be rudderless.
That's
It
very good.
really, yeah.
It's interesting because mentors, I think sometimes the definition of a mentor has a longer point of view, and I've shared with many that I've had some mentors that were mentoring me for one day, And I've had others that have followed me through my whole life. And I like that personal board of directors. I'm going to borrow that from you. I think that's good.
It really is critical.
Yeah.
But you've just made a very interesting point about you could have a conversation with somebody once that have a
Mhm.
profound impact on the way you approach something, right?
That's
And
right.
um, and that's and what that is it's growth, right? And we're constantly growing. To your point around the ever changing in technology today and how scary it is, you know, understanding some of that. You don't have to be the expert of all of it, but understanding how that impacts what you're doing, that's growth.
It's interesting on the networking because it's something I think that'll come up on probably every conversation of this nature and others, is that it's actually still in short supply. People are not understanding the total value of that. The younger you are, the less they understand it. They have a circle of friends, but this networking, who can support me in my ambitions and not just cheer me on. So a little bit different. But I think a great example in networking is you and I having this conversation. We haven't
Absolutely.
we haven't seen each other.
Absolutely.
I don't know. We saw each other in person the last time. It's 15 years ago, maybe. I don't know. It must be at least
Yeah,
that
yeah,
long.
yeah,
Yeah,
and that's the thing. But that's the whole idea around
yeah,
building strong relationships,
that's
building,
right.
mentors. Because I could call you up, Walter, and says, "Hey, as a CEO, I may have, I may have a problem, or I'm trying to solve a problem that needs a CEO's perspective. I'm 300% confident I can pick up the phone and say, Walter,
100%. Anytime.
here's my problem,
Likewise,
right?
and we've done it.
And we've done it.
That's
Exactly,
right.
we've done it.
Exactly.
So
That's
that's the
right.
beauty. So the other thing is, particularly when you're young, you're a lot younger. You are, sometimes invincible, right? And so you don't know what you don't know, right? Because
Mm.
you particularly today with the way technology is and how easily you can get information. It's not your engine you use. You Google this and you get a bunch of answers. And then the challenge is with all this information that you've just gathered, right? You now have to assimilate all that because you're going to get a ton, right?
100%.
And you now have to have context around it, right?
Which is hard
And
for
that
young
takes
people.
exactly, and that
Mm.
takes critical thinking skills,
Mm.
right? So how do you apply critical thinking to all of this information overload that you're getting?
So just what is critical thinking? What do you define that?
So I define that as assessing your surroundings, your situation, and your information, right? And being able to parse, um, integrate, and come to a conclusion, right?
It sounds like
Because
it takes some skill.
that's critical thinking.
That's right.
Without that, then all the information that you get, if you don't have critical thinking, then all you do is regurgitate.
Mm.
All you do is regurgitate, and in today's environment where the integrity of data based upon source is important, critical thinking becomes even more important because it's not everything that you see you can take at face value. So in comes again the value of mentors, networking partners, and
Mm.
your personal board of directors because you could now say, then go engage any of those groups and say, hey, this is the information I'm getting. Um, what do you think? What is your perspective? Is it, do you think some of this is true? Not, etc. In order to come up with something cogent.
Have you ever just thought of, I have a problem or I have a challenge or I'm trying to think something through and you call somebody you don't know?
And I've called somebody I don't know. Not directly, because I will call somebody I know, and they'll say,
They'll
I
direct you.
know. They'll say, I'm not the expert of this, but I want you to call this person. And then I will go call that person I don't know.
Okay.
Right? So
Because
I have,
that's
I wanted to give, but again, I wanted to give full context in that because it's important. It
mhm.
goes back to the idea of the people around you in your network that you're supporting and they're supporting you. They can point you in the right direction.
So I was at this I don't know, training session or a download of some of the AI ins and outs and how to think about it more than actually apply it. And one of the questions were, how much should you prompt an AI to give you a decent answer? And so the questions were, I don't know, 100 words, 10 words, 50 words. And so the teacher said, it's 450 to 500 words. Again, it's not that hard to get to 500 words. And then he said, why do you think that young people are fast to adapt to technology? And so it's obvious they've been born with it, raised with it. And so that was the answer. Why do you think they're terrible at prompting? And I said, oh, that I don't know. And it was the reason is because they don't have the context. They don't have the
It's
critical thinking. They don't have. So I said, you know
exactly.
what?
Hmm.
So it makes sense, right? I don't know the context for which I'm looking for the information. So my prompt can only be as good as what I know. And if I don't know too much, I don't know too much.
Yeah, then you
So,
can't prompt, appropriately. Absolutely. I totally agree. I
yeah.
totally agree.
So, as a human, lots of things in our life are very, very good. Some things are challenging, and so on your human side, which reflects through all the work that you've done.
Hmm.
So, can you share any impacts there? Some of the things I think you're involved in some charities. You're involved in lots of goodwill things.
Yeah. So I will tell you, so I get involved in, I used to be on the board of the Better Business Bureau here in Arizona. Uh, at one point was on the a special committee for one of Arizona's governors on how do we think about helping people around substance abuse.
Mm.
I was on the board. I think this is probably the most rewarding thing for me. And I don't plug names, but I'll plug this time. I was on the board many years ago of an organization called Aid to the Adoption of Special Kids.
Okay,
And when you hear special kids, you automatically assume that there's a special need, right? Developmental, whatever. But a special kid could be a kid who is a preteen or older, completely normal, but the profile of people looking for some a child to adopt may want younger kids or babies,
sure,
etc.
of course.
Right, so that is itself is a special situation, and I remember attending one of our meet and greets. Basically, and it was a very casual event where potential adopters, adopting parents, would meet kids and just in a very informal settings, and but they're also checking out the kids, right? But it's
Sure,
very informal. It's a lot of fun, very rewarding. But there's some kids who, are very smart and they know what the deal is, right? And so to watch some of the kids, in my mind, these are my words, perform to make sure that they get picked,
wow,
is it's it's heartwarming and heart wrenching at the same time for me
I'm sure.
because this child may be may be behaving in a manner that is total counter to who they really are, right? But
Sure.
heartwarming at the same time because you just have some of these children that are just very genuine, very authentic, and are able to find home. So being able to to um, to facilitate those matches was one of the things that was probably most impactful to me as an individual. So I'm receiving a something that validates who I am as a human.
So, how many years were you associated with this charity?
Yeah, so I did it for about 2 or 3 years,
Okay.
and it was an incredibly rewarding experience.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Young people who are also thinking about balance, when you're when you're in your 20s and you're starting a family and you're ambitious and you got the problem under our nose, as we were talking about a while ago, how important is that balancing act with other things in life? That giving back, that it's early because they might not think about it. It's like I'm busy enough with everything I have,
Hmm.
which there's truth to that. But at some point, when do you start to say, it's time to share?
Um, I think there is no perfect time to share. I think we should always have, regardless of where we are in our lives and our careers, is to have a sharing mindset. And we see that every day. If you were to walk out to
Mhm.
a kindergarten playground today and watch children interact,
Sure.
you see it, right?
100%.
And we may see it as, wow, it's great these kids are playing, but these are what I would call very molding moments, right? So
100%.
yeah, so I would say you're always sharing, and when and you don't have to, and it's probably the most beautiful kind of sharing is you don't have to be conscious that says I'm going to go share X today, right?
100%.
It comes very automatic. It's very organic to you.
I think the most valuable of things that you can share is time. And
Yes.
just, and circumstances are different and different throughout your life and different with who you're
Hmm.
interacting, but time is often the most precious commodity. And we find
Absolutely.
we find as we get a little older in life, we get less and less of it. I'm sure it's all the same amount of time in a day, but it just seems like less. Yvonne, thinking of the audience, thinking of people thinking about, okay, how can I see what advice would you have given your younger self? I think I love that question because we're not able to do that, but and my mentors sometimes do it for us. But what advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
The advice I'd give my 25-year-old self would be, and some of these things I've done, I just didn't know I was doing them, but I think I needed to do more or do them better. Um, I would say be curious. So, um,
It's very good.
you things are laid on a table, right? And that's only one dimension. Ask yourself the question, does this thing have other dimensions? So I would say be curious. Um, when you're zealous and you have a lot of energy, you move fast. I would say um, listen to understand as opposed to listen so you could respond. Those are two different things. Because when you're
Very wise.
listening to respond, you're just, while somebody's speaking to you, you're not hearing what they're saying. You're building your argument, right? Listen to understand versus building to respond. Um,
Very good.
we sometimes, especially when we're younger, can be sometimes cautious. But I would say uh, be be fearless and and be fearless and prudent,
Mm.
right? And so there's some learnings that need to happen there in terms of what does prudent mean, right? But especially when you're 25 or you're 20 or whatever the case may be, but be fearless, and prudent.
Mm.
And finally, I would say uh, be authentic. Be authentic. Be you.
Be you. Is there something in your thought process that says that there are different versions of you if you look over a lifetime?
I would say yes. Um, in my younger days, I am driving to make sure that my technology, meets the latest business challenge, um, while focusing on starting a new family, right? So I'm a different person there, right? I am focusing on um, building versus sustainability, right?
Mm.
I'm moving, 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 moving. You get to a little bit further down the road, and now you have a family, and then your behaviors are different because you now have a larger responsibility in terms of meeting the needs of your family and making sure that you are around for your family, right? So your behaviors as an individual, you turn, you're now a different self. And I would say the third part about that is you have I think I've transitioned to a different level of consciousness around um, relationships and valuing true relationships.
Mm,
Never underestimate the value of really solid, true, genuine relationships.
very good. I think somebody shared with me, what version of me was the best version of me, and it's the version of me right now.
Absolutely.
It's like it's a building block, right? So it's
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, it is that building block as
Mm.
you go through life. But think about all that you've accumulated in terms of experiences, in terms of thought, in terms of competency, and having the ability to share that with others.
That's beautiful.
Think about how incredible that is.
So I can't imagine anyone listening to you for the last 30 minutes or so would be anything but inspired as I knew they would. And I got to say that as we get to the end and wrap this up, the appreciation of who you were, even though we spent time more in a business context at the time, I must say that your integrity shone through every time, and quite frankly, you are growing as I speak to you today. So even a little bit of white on the top there. At least you have something on it. I got nothing on the
Well,
top.
I have a few more of these than the last time we saw each other in
That's
person.
right. That's right.
But that's okay. I'm actually kind of liking it.
There you go. It's beautiful. I had an uncle that said once, he says, I get some gray hairs. Maybe they're going to call me sir.
The funny part about this is, these days, so many people call me sir. I'm like, wait a minute.
That's right. You're talking to my dad or what? That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
So, any
but
parting thoughts for our audience as to just again, the whole context is thought leadership, and anything that you want to share as a parting thought for them.
yeah, is don't be afraid. Um, don't be afraid of ambiguity. Ambiguity you'll
Mm,
find in life is a constant. Uh, your ability to navigate that is based upon uh, how you learn, who you learn from, the circle that you're in,
mm,
because they will help you navigate. And don't be don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Sometimes your
mm.
vulnerabilities come to the fore, but that's what gets you over the hump because it allows you to absorb some very critical things that you probably never otherwise would.
People see vulnerability and naivety as sometimes not a strength, and for me, I think it allows you to not understand that there's nothing that can prevent me because I don't know any better. And vulnerability is I'm willing to learn, and I can be taught. I know that I started to get my first teachers with my kids when they were very young. They're still teaching me today, and now the next generation of grandchildren, they're teaching me. So it's a constant learning thing. So hopefully it's a circle that keeps on going.
Oh
So
yeah,
it
I'm enjoying one parting thing as I'm
please,
enjoying life. My youngest who is turning 27. I remember when they were kids. I got them into watching golf, and I used to take them to golf tournaments, and they'd enjoy
okay.
it because they would get they're in sky boxes and stuff, and
Mhm.
they'd get the ice cream and the popcorns and all that. And so at the last Waste Management Open golf tournament in Phoenix in February, a couple of months ago, I had a really good laugh because that 27-year-old is now inviting me to that very same tournament.
That's beautiful. That's
Isn't that
beautiful.
beautiful?
Oh, something we didn't touch on, and we keep saying towards the end, but did I hear you right that you're doing marathons?
Yes. The last 2.5 years or so, I've taken up this sport. This is coming from a guy who I have friends who are runners, and I used to tease them and tell them, "Hey, there are good deals on cars out there, and interest rates are good. Just buy a car. But how I got into this another story. But I got into running, and then there is this Abbott Six World Major Marathons, which
Mm,
is New York, Boston, London, Berlin, Tokyo, and who am I missing? Anyway, I'm missing one of them. So I've completed New York, I've done Chicago,
wow.
I've done London, and 4 weeks ago I completed Tokyo. So,
Wonderful.
so I have two more to go, which is Boston and Berlin. Berlin's the one I forgot. So this is kind of one of those things where it's one of those things I thought I would never do.
I'm sure.
So that's one of these things that you thought you would never do it. You don't think you would ever have the ability to do it, and somehow you're doing it, and you're doing it at this level.
It's wonderful.
Um, and then the other thing, the cliche "mind over matter" is was a very big learning for me 4 weeks ago when I was doing the Tokyo Marathon. I picked up a shin splint injury
Mm.
about 4 or 5 weeks before the race. Doing physical therapy, slowing down the training. Physical therapist is like, "Hey, I don't know if you should do this race. You could do it, but I don't know if you should do this race." And so I crafted a strategy, and I decided I'm doing the race. So think about 26.2 miles, where every step you took
That would take
is
critical thinking.
it would be technical. Either that or I'm crazy. Right?
That's
Every
right.
step I took, every step I took, it hurt more and more. And I got to a point where in my head came two voices or two thoughts. Thought number one is you're here in Tokyo because you have a goal of finishing the top six. That was thought number one. So I'm not, and then thought number two is so continue to run and go get your medal. And so I spent the last 13 miles telling myself, go get your medal.
I'm
Go
not
get your.
crazy.
The funny thing about it is, um, at some points, not all at points, but at some points after that, the pain kind of went into the background
Mm.
because I'm telling myself why I'm there, what's my goal, go get your medal. So I didn't know that I had it within me to be able to run 26.2 miles in that much pain. If someone told me, which a therapist kind of did tell me, but I would have never told you, you know, 5 weeks and 2 days from today, back then, that I can run 26.2 miles in pain. I would say you're crazy. I can do it. So never under, never underestimate what you can achieve.
100%. Wow, what a great way to end this beautiful conversation. So, Yvonne, thank you so much. I appreciate it very much that you took the time. And yeah, we'll reconnect and
Walter, thank you so
you
much
we'll
for
see it
giving me
live
the
soon.
yeah,
My
yeah.
pleasure.
Thank you for so much for giving me the opportunity to at least share my experience, and I hope
Beautiful.
someone benefits from it. It's always good to see you. We have to get together
Likewise.
live soon.
Absolutely. You take care, my friend.
Take care. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.